Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today I have a sin to confess. I've never been a fan of Christian rock or metal music. Never had much patience for it, have never cared for it, but despite that, I'm really enjoying this new Wytch Hazel album. Why is that? I don't know. Let's talk about it, though.
Oh, I've got an even better idea, Mr. Meltdown. How about we don't do that? Because why would we? This is heavy metal, goddammit! It's supposed to be dark and weird and scary and dangerous and evil and satanic. It ain't supposed to be some watered-down garbage for goody-two-shoes normies. Christian metal? What next? Non-alcoholic beer? Vegan steak? Fuck that all the way to hell or heaven and back! Wow! No!
Normally, this would be the part of the video where I scold you or laugh at you until you leave. But in your defense, Thrashin' Jackson, metal has kind of been explicitly anti-religion, anti-God, anti-Christian for, ever? Since basically its inception? Since the very moment that the Devil's Tritone emerged in the song Black Sabbath from the band Black Sabbath on the album Black Sabbath, metal and God have at bare minimum, it's fair to argue, they haven't had the best relationship. But, and just hear me out, I don't think it necessarily comes from a hatred of God, but rather with a fascination with all things dark and weird and supernatural, with all things that are the occult, with all things that, people are kind of scared of. I think there's a shock factor element as well. I think a lot of metal bands do what they do because they just want to create something shocking and provocative and wild. And that's not to say that there aren't metal bands and musicians that aren't genuinely kind of putting out really satanic vibes out there. There are absolutely musicians who are full-blown Satanists. For God's sakes, Behemoth did an entire album called The Satanist. And on that note, it's especially common to find more and more dark, satanic kind of influenced and feeling stuff when you go further down the kind of metal rabbit hole, when you go further into thrash metal, death metal, black metal, doom metal. But simultaneously, and despite this, there are a lot of metal heads and metal musicians who are religious and who are Christian. Ozzy Osbourne of the aforementioned Black Sabbath is himself a devout Christian, as is Tom Araya of Slayer fame, as is Alice Cooper, as are I imagine a wide variety of different classic heavy metal hard rock musicians that we can think of right now. Plus, the reality is when you have a genre and a style of music and a culture really that is as big as metal, you're going to have a variety of different beliefs and ideas and ideologies eventually kind of bleed in. It's pretty much inevitable. And on top of that, the Christian music, rock, pop scene is it's a titan, really. It's a full-blown industry in and of itself. There is very often a real hunger and demand for popular styles of music with a religious and specifically Christian twist and appeal. It seems a little contradictory for all of this to exist, considering how much time, energy, and money has been put into, generations of rock and roll is the devil's music. But I think there are a couple logistic reasons as to why Christian rock and metal is as important and as popular as it is today, and as to why people feel it is so necessary for them to have this. The first of which being that I think at a certain point, a lot of Christians who were in the music industry just realized, if you can't beat them, join them. There are people that want this. There are people that feel they need this. Let's fucking give it to them. The second thing being the satanic panic itself. I think that, especially for a band like Stryper in the 80s, they benefited from being one of the only, and if I'm not mistaken, the first openly Christian heavy metal band in a sea of bands like Slayer and Venom and Motley Crue, who dressed provocatively and sang of dangerous lifestyles and extreme violence and the devil. And then going into the 90s and early 2000s, this exploded with like more contemporary hard rock and alternative metal and post-grunge kind of stuff. You know, bands like Creed, Switchfoot, Thousand Foot Crutch, Skillet, Red, selling millions and millions and millions of records. But like, all of it is so bad. So bad. Like, musically, some of the most generic, dumbed down, formulaic, paint by numbers, kind of like edgy hard rock, butt rock, as some like to call it, that I think I've ever heard in my life. It's all just so bad. And it just feels really preachy, and I feel like it lacks that kind of rawness and that kind of grit and that kind of edge that I really want from like rock and heavy metal music. I just feel like when it comes to a lot of these bands, I'm listening to the same four chords and the same hooks and the same messages over and over and over and over again. It gets boring. It gets annoying even at a certain point. To quote Hank Hill, "Can't you see you're not making Christianity any better? You're just making rock and roll worse." Now, I concede it is very possible that I am very biased. For the sake of avoiding controversy and, you know, potentially derailing this entire video and conversation, I will spare you the details of my thoughts and feelings on Christianity, especially modern day Christianity. But suffices to say, I'm not a big fan. And as such, Christian rock and metal maybe wasn't gonna stand much of a chance with me, like, at all. But despite that, I'm enjoying Wytch Hazel. Wytch Hazel might be the exception. And I think that it might be the exception because I'm finally hearing something that isn't super duper preachy to the point of being obnoxious, while also offering something that isn't just like fucking stupid 90s post-grunge butt rock drivel. The kind of stuff that Gerrymander would unironically slop up during a 4th of July barbecue. Wytch Hazel's music, specifically from this newest album, The Lamentations, is just absolutely delightful. Rooted in a real love and passion for like 70s, 80s classic hard rock and heavy metal and like proto-metal and underground metal and new wave of British heavy metal type stuff. I am not the first, nor will I be the last person to describe Wytch Hazel as a combination of like Thin Lizzy and Angel Witch. Specifically, the reason why people keep saying that is because it's true. It has that kind of vibe. It has that kind of spirit. I feel like in some parts I'm also getting a little bit of like Wishbone Ash, a little bit of Blue Oyster Cult. I also feel like there's an elegance, a grandeur to the record, and specifically in certain vocal harmonies and passages and the way that acoustics are kind of interwoven into everything that weirdly reminds me a little bit of some more guitar-centric material from a band like maybe Jethro Tull. And the album is light and colorful and joyous, but also like regal and elegant and big. Like, it's not a super heavy record in terms of tone, but it feels really important. The vibe is just different too, whereas most Christian rock and metal bands write music as a vehicle for the larger Christian narrative and message, with Wytch Hazel, it seems that the music is the priority and the feeling that it exudes is the priority. You know, whatever Christian element is there, you know, it's intentional, but it's also kind of a coincidence, and they don't want to shove it down your throat. As singer and guitarist Colin Hendra writes in a 2023 feature with Classic Rock magazine, "I don't see us as a Christian band, but music is one of the most spiritual experiences you can have, and essentially that comes from Jesus. That's the core of it. He is a healing power. We can all be healed by melody." The explicit goal here isn't converting people. The explicit goal is to make music that everyone can enjoy, that heals people, that sustains them in the same way that religion, that Jesus Christ heals and sustains so many people all over the world. That is wonderful. I can fuck with that. Lord knows I certainly have been fucking with it, more specifically fucking with this new album, The Lamentations. I mean, opening number, I Lament, is a spirited, soaring, upbeat, classic rock jam. All the different melodies and hooks and rhythms and beats and, guitars, it's not exactly the most complex, complicated, revolutionary stuff here. But it's done so well. It's written and presented so well. It's a genuinely catchy, spirited number. It brings the album to a thunderous open without necessarily crashing down like thunder in the way that you might expect on a more straightforward kind of heavy metal record. And from there, the good times keep on a-rolling. Following number Run the Race doesn't sound like something I'll hear on Christian rock radio or something I'll hear at Sunday service. It sounds like something that I would want blasting out of my speakers, driving a motorcycle down a desert highway as the sun sets in the background. Because of its bold and endearing hook, because of its use of galloping, driving rhythms and guitars. And that transition around the 3-minute and 30-second mark from the main hook into this big kind of vocal outburst, emboldened by some simple rolling guitar progressions, is just so effortlessly cool. And it has a lot of heart and soul to it as well because of the vocal approach. Colin has a very rustic, soulful, small kind of voice that he uses to great effect. Then there's the Citadel, which has some more grandiose sections in the latter half, definitely bringing in some full-on new wave of British heavy metal influence and soundscapes and kind of like lingering, aching guitars here, reminiscent of some stuff I might have even heard from like the Tigers of Pantang back in the day. And though it may not seem like much, the very simple addition of acoustic rhythm guitars manages to transform elements into something very honest while maintaining that epic kind of spirit and sheen. It's just as much Angel Witch, Thin Lizzy, Tigers of Pantang, and all these other bands we've mentioned as it is, in this moment, kind of a Fleetwood Mac-style jam. Even some of the more dramatic and slow-burning cuts like Heavy Load and The Devil Within are still pretty effective. And I like here, too, that there's a fair bit of, like, introspection while kind of, like, talking about, like, their religious beliefs and, like, never really giving in and, like, the weight of, like, what they're going through and the weight of their beliefs. The messaging here is more obvious, but it's still just subtle enough and, more importantly, just very effective. One other thing I should note is that the entire album has done such a great job at capturing this kind of like retro hard rock heavy metal feel that there's a part of me where I'm like, if you had told me that this had come out in the late 70s or early 80s and maybe this was just like a remaster or something, I'd believe you. And that, I feel, really adds to the honesty and authenticity of the record. Like, it is a clean, glossy record in parts, but it's not squeaky clean and super hyper-polished or overproduced. Nor does it feel the need to fake being more gritty and edgy and dangerous like many of the Christian rock and metal bands that we already mentioned and name-dropped earlier in the video. I'm feeling a very strong 4 to 5 on this bad boy. This is a really, really, really great record. A delightful, entertaining, and even surprising listen. Like, I went into this not really expecting much. I went into it just kind of having this morbid curiosity about it. And because, well, there wasn't much else coming out this weekend that I was really excited about, that I was really interested in. And I leave it, I think, having heard one of the more unique and original and exciting kind of classic rock, heavy metal inspired records of the year so far, and also maybe even having gained a new kind of perspective on the possibilities and the potential of Christian rock and metal music. And there's a lesson here for Christian rock and metal bands as well. You don't have to be the next Creed, the next Skillet, the next 1,000-Foot Crutch. You don't have to write the same songs over and over and over again, with the same chords, the same patterns, the same textures, the same hooks, the same very simplistic Sunday service message. You don't have to write rock music that my mom would be willing to play. You can just make great music that has the spirit and the essence that you want. You can just do it. Wytch Hazel did it effortlessly, I would argue. Some say the devil has all the best tunes. I think God took that personally. He's dropping some heat. Some certified bangers. I'm by no means converted and will very likely not be anytime soon. But if more Christian rock and metal sounds like this, I am definitely going to be listening to more Christian rock and metal. Very strong 4 to 5. Definitely check this out. I look forward to checking out more music from Wytch Hazel in the very near future. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be, contrary to very popular belief. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here. Boom, more videos. Join us on Discord. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.